Hi, it's Alex Biggs from Drum Bass, and today I want to go through the channel strips on the SSL Big 6. I want to go through one of the super analog tracks and the stereo tracks. Also, I want to explain how I've managed to get the headphone amp working out the back through the stereo cues and what actual stereo cues are. Also, a little bit about the Talkback function and the G-Series compressor. So please subscribe. I'm also going to be doing videos on recording guitar, ukulele, singers, bass guitar and keys, just to see how the desk performs in a real world situation. I'll be doing those sort of individually over the next few weeks. So as I say, please subscribe. Any comments, stick them in the bottom, and let us know what else you want us to do regarding the desk. I'm going to be doing lots of studio stuff as well, about sort of absorption, soundproofing, what mics we use, miking techniques, so that should be fun too. So as I say, please subscribe. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's go through the channel strip. So let's start off with the 4 super analog channels. So by default, they default to the XLR. I've got a jack plugged in as well, only because if you push the line in, it then just goes straight to your jacks. SSL recommend you use TRS as opposed to TS. The reason being that it's TRS are balanced, so therefore you won't get any hum or any noise or buzzing if you run them near power sources or long cable runs. So to be safe, if you can, especially if you're doing like keyboards or anything like that in the back of the desk, use the TRS. It's absolutely fine to use TS if you can on like guitars and bass guitars, but just make sure that they don't go near any electrical sources or the cables are too long, because you don't want to ruin your recordings before you start. Now, if you have a look, you can see also that there's a high Z input. So pressing that down would mean that it balances the impedance of the signal to the channel. I use a DI box only because I find it easier, because the DI box is centered in the side of the studio, and I can just stick in what I need. And when I record bass and guitar, I do a line into the desk and then I mic up the amp. So a DI box is good for that, because it can split the channels. I sometimes think that the cabs do sound better, but I'm going to be doing, as I said, some experimenting with plugging basses direct in and using a cab and see what the sound is like. So that should be fun. Anyway, let's carry on going down the channel strip. So we got this button here is high pass filter. So remember, think you letting the highs pass into your mix. So if you've got any hum or traffic noise, or if you're in a home studio and it's an issue, you can always push that. As long as your instruments or voices don't have any bottom end, you should be able to filter that real low rumble out. So that's a handy feature. And then you've got your 48 volt for your condenser microphones. And then going down, we've got the gain. So we've got the gain pot there, and next to that we have the from USB. So from USB just means that once you've done your recording and you're in your DAW, you can push that down and you can send it by going into your channel configuration where you want to send it. You can send it back through the desk to mix. Now this is really good because it takes your eyes off the screen and makes you listen, because I keep looking at EQs and rather than listening, looking. So it's a real good discipline to start mixing on a proper analog desk, and it's really good way of learning to mix instead of mixing with your eyes. So that's cool. This button here is your reverse polarity. Again, as you probably know, if you put 2 mics on the same sound source, if they're not exactly perfect, the distance, they'll get a slight bit of phase in, so you can reverse the polarity to stop that. So that's a great feature, having that. Coming down, you've got your STQ1, STQ2. Now, these have always been a bit confusing to me, and I looked it up, and what STQs are basically SSL's version of saying aux sends. So as soon as I thought, aux sends, it just totally makes more sense. So basically think of stereo cues as auxiliary sends. So you're going to be sending that channel wherever you want. And then once I got my head around that, it just made much more sense than cue sends, because I keep going on about Q sends, and when you don't know what a Q send is, it's really confusing, but think of it as an auxiliary send. And again, I'll be doing another video about how I use the right hand side of the desk and how I route everything. That's going to take a while because it's pretty complex, but that will be coming soon. So these are the stereo Q sends or aux sends. Now they've got a makeup gain, a makeup gain and a pan. Now the other thing to note, as you can see, they've got pans and balance. A pan is you're panning or moving the whole signal to the left or to the right, because these are mono signals, so you're not cutting anything, you're moving it. So pan is basically moving the whole signal to the left side or the right side. Now when you balance something, what happens is you've got two sources, so what you're doing effectively is you're cutting the right side, so you just hear the left, or cutting the left side and you just hear the right. So that is the difference. So the balance actually cuts a signal where the pan actually moves the signal. Okay, let's have a little look at the EQ. So you push it down to fire it up, and you've got these buttons for the bell curve. I believe it's just a shelf, so it's quite a cut-off on the EQ, or a bell is a bit like when you push up your EQ, it forms a bell. So if you want to engage the bell, push the buttons down. So what we'll do, we'll have a little look at the difference. So let's try doing the high frequency. So I'm going to be pulling the high frequency up, and then I'm going to be turning it down. Then back to the middle, let's push down the bell. So I'm going to be pushing the high frequency up and pushing the high frequency down. Okay, so now let's try the mid. The mid hasn't got a bell curve, but it's still really powerful, as you can see when I start turning up the mid and then turning down the mid. So that makes a big difference. And then you've got the bass. So let's do it shelf. So we're turning down the bass, then we're turning up the bass. Now let's put on the the bell. So we're turning down the bass, and then we're turning up the bass. Okay, so that's your EQ. Then going down, you have got the pan for the channel, as opposed to the pan for the Qs or the auxes. So the only reason you'd probably use pans, if you've got, say for some reason you did put a keyboard or a stereo instrument in, you can hard left and hard right pan them and then send them out. There's many options there for that, so that could be one of them. Okay, so again, when you're mixing, you might want to pan the whole channel in your mix, so that's what that's for. And then you've got your compressor. Just a side note, with compression and EQ, remember that because this is an analog desk, once you record it, you can't undo it. So you have to be really careful. And again, hats off to these engineers on these big consoles, that if they use any of these things, they've totally committed to it and you can't remove it. Like in a DAW, obviously you can bring back the compression if you know it's too strong, but if you've recorded it while it's on, you're pretty stuck. So just bear that in mind when you're recording. Just be really subtle with your EQs and your compression. Okay, so let's try the compression. So let's put it on. So that's on full compression, and then we come back and that's on less. So right is full and left isn't. Now there's obviously you can look up what the makeup gain and threshold is, but to be honest with you, I'd just use your ears on that. Okay, right, so let's come down. So we've got the insert. So on the back of the desk, you can see you've got these insert points, and what you can do is you can insert some outboard gear, perhaps a reverb unit or whatever you want to do with that. Then you've got a USB out, post fader. Again, quite important, this button, because what you want to do is if you push that down after it's been gone through this channel, it then goes to USB. If you leave it up, it then goes through the right hand side of the desk, through all the buttons there and processes. So best is when you're recording is to push that down, and when you're bringing the mix back, bring it up. So this is the mute button, and also a bus B. At the back of the channel, you've got another output, so you could do an alternative mix to something. You could maybe send one channel to a stage monitor. You could send it to another desk or another PA system or anything else really. So it gives you an option of creating another little mix within this console to send to this output. Okay, and then you've got PFL, so pre-fade listen. Again, that just checks your meters, so you'd push that down, and then you can check your levels. Okay, so that's basically the super analog channels. The stereo channels are a little bit more simplified, and we've got some things to talk about there as well. We're looking at these. You've got the USB, so again you can bring back a mix into this. So you could bring back a stereo channel, you can mix your keyboards, you could mix other things like drums or anything like that if you wanted to. So that is what that is for. Your mono button, again, that's really useful. I love that feature because, as I said, when I record my electric drums, I can either do it as a stereo channel left and right, which is absolutely fine, but because of my drums have got 8 possible outputs, it means I can separate the kick, the snare, the cymbals, anything I want. So what I can do is record 8 channels. Now how I do that is by leaving the mono button up so they become stereo, so then it sends 2 channels out per channel, so I end up having those 8 inputs at the back going into the door, and then I can record it. But the problem being is that when I actually play, so if I wanted to play my drum kit, it means that the snare is on the left hand side and the kick is on the right. Push the mono button down and then it centers everything, it pulls them into the middle of the speakers. So that's really good. So as I say, you can record these as stereo channels, ideal for keyboards, because it hard left and hard right pans them, ready to go. And again, I'll be recording some of those at some point soon. Or you can do what I do and utilize the fact that they're sending 8 signals out. Okay, so let's carry on. So we've got, again, STQ1 and 2. Again, think of them as aux sends. Okay, so the post button is just, again, after fader or through the desk. You've got, obviously, again, you've got the makeup gain here, but you haven't got the balance on these ones because they're stereo. You won't need it. You've got EQ, again, no bell curves, but again, you've got the high, mid and low. Again, your balance, so again, watch what you do with that. So again, depending on how you're using it, if you're bringing other instruments through, you might want to pan it in the mix or balance it in the mix. You've got your fader. You've got USB out, post fader. So again, I push that down when I'm recording into the door and leave it up when I'm not. Again, with this one, because it hasn't got a compressor, you can, in theory, leave it up and then run it through into your G series compressor. Okay, so let's have a little look at the talkback function. So what this is designed for, this is designed for engineers to talk to the artists over headphones, and again you can use these STQs to send mixes to the headphones. So you can see out the back of the desk what I've done. I've run a cable which was 2 TS jacks into a TRS single jack. I've put it into this headphone amp, and then what happens is that I can actually send the different channels to the headphones. If I push this button, that sends the whole mix to the headphones. But again, I'll be doing a video about that side of the desk another time. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was of use to you, and don't forget to subscribe. And as I say, these other videos will be coming up soon. Any questions, just stick them in the comments. I'll try my best to answer them, and I shall speak to you next time. Thank you.